Once you turn 50, don't tell your children these 7 secrets. You've spent years accumulating knowledge, wisdom, and experiences that have shaped who you are today. You've watched the world change, navigated personal triumphs and setbacks, and come to terms with what truly matters in life. Now, as you approach your 50s, or perhaps you're already there, you're beginning to realize that the way you see the world is different than it was in your younger years. You know things now that you didn't know when you were 30. You understand the value of time, the importance of self-care, and the lessons that life has taught you through the years. But here's the catch. Some of the things you've learned are too important to just give away. Some of the truths you've uncovered, they're best kept to yourself. And I'm not talking about trivial details or everyday advice. No, I'm talking about the deep, sometimes uncomfortable truths, lessons about life, love, success, and failure that could change the way your children see the world. These are the kinds of secrets that might not help them at all, and in some cases could even hurt them if they knew too soon. And I know this may sound strange, but sometimes keeping those secrets is the best way to help your children grow. So, as you step into this stage of life, it's important to ask yourself, what should you hold back from your children? What is the wisdom they don't need to know just yet? In today's video, I'm going to reveal 7 powerful secrets, 7 truths about life and aging that you shouldn't share with your children. These are lessons that you've learned through decades of experience, and while they may seem like things they need to know, trust me, they're better off discovering them on their own. And you're going to want to stick around for number 7. It's the one secret that, if shared too soon, could change everything you've worked so hard to build with your children. So grab a seat, take a deep breath, and let's dive into these 7 powerful, life-altering secrets that you don't have to share with your kids, especially number 7. Number 1, the cost of success, why hard work doesn't always pay off. We've all heard the phrase, hard work always pays off. It's drilled into us from an early age, instilled by our parents, teachers, and society. It promises that if we work long enough and push ourselves hard enough, eventually we'll reach our desired goals, financial security, career success, and personal fulfillment. But the reality is much more complex. As you reach your 50s, you begin to realize that success is not as straightforward as this mantra suggests. Psychologically, the idea of success as a direct result of hard work can lead to a cognitive dissonance when that success doesn't materialize. We've invested so much of ourselves, our time, energy, relationships into the pursuit of an ideal, and yet sometimes that ideal remains out of reach. This dissonance can lead to feelings of frustration, guilt, and even regret. You might ask yourself, was all the effort really worth it? But the truth is, hard work alone isn't always the determining factor for success. There's something deeper at play: luck, timing, and often privilege. Success isn't a linear trajectory. It's full of unexpected detours. The mental toll of constantly striving for something that doesn't seem to come can erode your self-worth and create feelings of inadequacy. This is where many people experience burnout, the point where the dream they've chased so tirelessly starts to feel more like a trap than an achievement. Why shouldn't you share this with your children? It's not that you want to keep them in the dark, but rather, you want them to build their own understanding of success. If you tell them too soon that success is often unpredictable, that the hours of effort don't always guarantee the outcomes, it might discourage them before they've even started. They might start doubting themselves too early or fear that all their effort is futile. The truth is, this is a lesson that can only be learned through experience. When they reach a point in life where they've given their all to something, and it doesn't turn out the way they expected, they'll understand on a deeper level what it means to truly fail and how to rise above it. They'll also learn to redefine what success means for them, not as an external achievement, but as an internal sense of fulfillment and peace. Ultimately, the most valuable lesson in success is the realization that failure is not the opposite of success, but rather a part of it. It's the stepping stone, the necessary pain, that helps us build resilience and wisdom. This perspective isn't something that can be taught easily. It's something your children will have to discover themselves. Number 2, the illusion of balance. Why having it all is a lie. In our younger years, we are sold a very attractive, yet ultimately destructive idea. You can have it all. We're told that balance is the key to happiness. Balance in work, relationships, personal growth, and health. The goal is to maintain a seamless integration of all aspects of life, where nothing is neglected and everything flourishes. But here's the psychological truth. Balance is not something that can be perfectly achieved. As you grow older, the mental clarity you gain comes from realizing that striving for balance often leads to burnout and dissatisfaction. The more you chase balance, the more you may feel like you're missing something. You sacrifice one area for the sake of another, and it becomes a vicious cycle of trying to find harmony in a world that is inherently chaotic. On a deeper psychological level, this is linked to the concept of perfectionism. The desire for balance is often driven by the fear of failure or the idea that one aspect of life must not overshadow another. But the truth is, life is messy. We are messy. Emotions, relationships, and careers ebb and flow. They don't work in neat little boxes. And the constant pressure to maintain this fabricated sense of balance can actually lead to anxiety, stress, and a diminished sense of self-worth. From a psychological perspective, this is why so many people experience a midlife crisis. They hit a point where they've tried to keep everything balanced, and they realize that it's simply impossible. The illusion that we can have it all leads to feelings of guilt when something has to be let go. The myth of balance is rooted in an external pressure to live up to unrealistic standards. Standards that don't allow for the messiness and unpredictability that life naturally brings. Why shouldn't you tell your children this? Because they're still in the process of building their own worldview. The concept of balance may seem achievable to them, and you don't want to rob them of that belief. They need to live through their own struggles to understand that there will always be times when one area of their life demands more attention than another. Only then will they come to understand that life is about prioritization, not balance. What they need to learn is that it's okay to focus on one thing and neglect another temporarily. It's okay to have periods of intense work and moments of deep personal growth. Life will never be in perfect equilibrium, and that's not only okay, it's beautiful. Once they understand this, they'll find a greater sense of peace and acceptance, knowing that it's not about balancing everything, but about living fully in each moment with all its imperfections. Number 3, the power of regret. Why it's not the enemy you think it is. When you hit your 50s, you inevitably begin to reflect on your life, on the choices you've made, the paths you've taken, and the opportunities you've missed. And with that reflection often comes regret. We tend to view regret as a negative emotion, something to avoid at all costs. After all, who wants to live with regret? Who wants to look back and think, if only I had done this differently? But here's the truth. Regret isn't always the enemy we think it is. In fact, it can be one of our greatest teachers. Psychologically speaking, regret is a powerful emotional response to our awareness that things could have been different. It arises when we realize that we made a choice that didn't lead to the desired outcome. But here's where it gets interesting. Regret, when processed correctly, has the power to propel us forward. It forces us to evaluate our decisions, to acknowledge where we might have gone astray, and ultimately to grow from those experiences. Regret, in its healthiest form, is a reminder of what we value. It helps us understand our deeper motivations and desires. In our 50s, we come to appreciate the fact that regret can lead to clarity. It clarifies what matters most and what we might have overlooked in the pursuit of other goals. Why shouldn't you tell your children this? Because at their age, they haven't lived enough to fully comprehend the complexities of regret. Telling them that regret can be valuable might prematurely cause them to fear it, or worse, avoid making bold decisions altogether. Instead, let them make their own mistakes. Let them feel the sting of regret for themselves so they can learn to embrace it as a part of the growth process. When they experience regret firsthand, they'll learn that it isn't a mark of failure. It's a part of living authentically. Over time, They'll understand that regret is not about wishing for a past that can't be changed, but about learning to make better decisions in the future. It's through this process that they'll begin to understand their own inner compass and what they truly want out of life. Number 4, the illusion of control. Why you can't control everything and why that's okay. As you grow older, you start to realize something that younger people often don't understand. No matter how hard you try, you cannot control everything in life. In your younger years, you might have clung to the idea that if you just did things the right way, worked hard enough, and followed the rules, you could maintain control over your destiny. But as you age, you begin to see how fragile this illusion of control really is. Psychologically, this idea of control is deeply embedded in our need for certainty. We crave stability, predictability, and the comfort of knowing what's coming next. This is a survival mechanism built into our brains to protect us from potential harm. But life, as you know, is rarely predictable. It's filled with unexpected twists, changes, and forces outside of our control. You might have spent years planning every detail, organizing every moment, thinking you could control your path. But then life happens. Things don't go as planned. You face setbacks that no amount of preparation could have predicted. And eventually, you come to terms with the fact that control is an illusion, a construct that we hold on to in an attempt to feel secure, but one that doesn't reflect the true nature of existence. Let's look at it from a psychological perspective. The need for control is often rooted in fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, and fear of the unknown. But the more you try to control everything, the more anxiety you build up. You spend so much energy worrying about things outside your control that you miss out on living in the moment, on embracing the unknown, and on surrendering to the flow of life. Why shouldn't you tell your children this? Because control is something they need to learn for themselves. As much as you want to protect them from the pain of realizing that they can't control everything, they need to come to this realization on their own. If you tell them too soon, they might use it as an excuse to avoid responsibility or to justify inaction. Instead, let them face the unpredictability of life. Let them learn that sometimes the best course of action is not to control, but to adapt. It's in moments of uncertainty that we often grow the most. When they understand that they can't control everything, they'll develop a deeper sense of resilience, emotional flexibility, and wisdom. They'll stop trying to micromanage their lives and start embracing life as it comes, accepting both the good and the bad. What they'll learn is that it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to take risks, to surrender to uncertainty, and to trust that even when things don't go according to plan, there's still value in the journey. In fact, it's often in those moments of surrender that we discover our truest selves. Number 5, the myth of happiness, why chasing it might be your biggest mistake. By the time you reach your 50s, you've learned a painful truth. Happiness isn't something you can chase or capture forever. The younger version of you was sold a narrative that happiness is a goal, a destination you reach after achieving the right amount of success, acquiring the right possessions, or meeting certain life milestones. But as you age, you begin to understand that happiness is far more fleeting and elusive than you were led to believe. Psychologically, this concept of happiness is deeply intertwined with the idea of hedonic adaptation. It's the phenomenon where we quickly become accustomed to the positive changes in our life, whether it's a new job, a new relationship, or a new possession, and the initial excitement fades away. This is why people often find themselves chasing the next big thing, constantly striving for more, yet never feeling truly satisfied. It's a cycle that can be exhausting and emotionally draining. What you start to realize in your 50s is that happiness isn't something that comes from external circumstances. It doesn't come from having more money, more fame, or more material possessions. Instead, true happiness comes from acceptance, accepting yourself as you are, embracing the imperfections of life, and learning to find joy in the small and everyday moments. It's a state of mind, not a destination. However, this is a truth that is difficult to impart to your children. The younger generation is often driven by the belief that happiness is something to be attained through achievement. It's the belief that once they reach a certain milestone, whether it's a promotion, a relationship, or financial freedom, they'll finally experience lasting happiness. Why shouldn't you tell them this? Because telling them that happiness is fleeting and not to be pursued at all might make them give up on goals, dreams, and aspirations altogether. It could discourage them from striving for improvement or setting meaningful goals. Instead, let them chase their version of happiness. Let them experience the highs of success and the lows of disappointment, because only through that process will they learn that true happiness isn't a prize to be earned, but a way of living. Once they realize that happiness can be found in the present moment, in the relationships they build, and in accepting life as it is, without constantly reaching for the next thing, they'll be able to find more peace and contentment. Happiness is about balance, self-compassion, and the ability to live fully in each moment, regardless of what you have or don't have. Number 6, the illusion of perfection. Why embracing imperfection leads to true freedom. When you're in your 50s, you begin to see clearly that the pursuit of perfection is a fruitless endeavor. When you were younger, the idea of being perfect was intoxicating. You wanted the perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect relationship. Society conditioned you to believe that perfection was the key to happiness, acceptance, and success. You believed that if you just worked hard enough, you could perfect every aspect of your life. But as you grew older, you realized that perfection isn't just impossible, it's also unnecessary. It's a mirage, an unattainable ideal that, if pursued too relentlessly, can rob you of the joy of living. From a psychological perspective, the drive for perfection is often linked to an intense fear of failure, a desire to avoid criticism, and an inability to accept flaws or mistakes. This fear can paralyze us, causing anxiety, self-doubt, and an overwhelming sense of never being enough. When you reach your 50s, you begin to understand that imperfection is not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced. Perfection is a rigid, narrow concept that leaves no room for growth, flexibility, or spontaneity. In contrast, imperfection opens the door to authenticity, creativity, and the freedom to be yourself without the constant pressure to measure up to someone else's standards. What's more, you realize that the people who truly inspire you are not the ones who have everything figured out, who have polished their lives to perfection. They are the ones who are real, who have faced their struggles, their failures, and their flaws, and yet continue to show up as their true selves. These are the people who give you permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to learn and grow from them. Why shouldn't you share this with your children just yet? Because they are still in the process of building their identity, and perfectionism often feels like a safety net for them. The idea of perfection provides a sense of control in a world that feels chaotic and uncertain. Telling them that perfection is an illusion may discourage them from trying to excel, from pursuing their dreams, or from aiming high. Instead, allow them to strive for their version of perfection, to experience the pressure and frustration that comes with it. When they fall short, they'll realize that it wasn't the failure that mattered. It was the growth, the lessons, and the resilience they built along the way. Only through this process will they learn to embrace their imperfections and understand that it's in their flaws that their true power lies. Perfection may be unattainable, but authenticity, growth, and self-acceptance are infinitely more valuable. Number 7, the truth about legacy. Why what you leave behind might not be what you think. As you approach your 50s, you begin to think more about your legacy, what you'll leave behind when you're gone. This is the age when many people reflect on the impact they've had on their families, their careers, and the world at large. What will they be remembered for? Will they have made a meaningful difference in the lives of others? Will their children or grandchildren appreciate the sacrifices they made and the lessons they imparted? At this stage of life, it's easy to become preoccupied with leaving behind something tangible, a successful career, a large fortune, a legacy of achievement. But as you reflect more deeply, you start to understand that the legacy you leave behind is not always what you thought it would be. It's not necessarily about the wealth you accumulate or the accolades you earn. Rather, It's about the emotional and spiritual imprint you make on the people you love. From a psychological standpoint, our desire to leave a legacy often stems from a deep-seated need for meaning and significance. We want to know that our lives matter, that we've contributed to something larger than ourselves. We want to believe that we've made a difference, that our lives haven't been in vain. But as you grow older, you come to realize that legacy isn't about the things you leave behind. It's about the lives you've touched, the values you've instilled, and the example you've set. The most powerful legacies are often the ones that aren't measurable, those that live on in the hearts and minds of your loved ones. Your children and grandchildren might not remember every material thing you gave them, but they will remember the way you made them feel. They will remember the love, the support, and the guidance you provided. They will remember the life lessons you taught them and how you lived your life with integrity, compassion, and purpose. Why shouldn't you tell your children this? Because the desire to leave a tangible legacy is often a part of their own journey, and they need to discover for themselves that the things they seek to leave behind won't bring the fulfillment they expect. If you tell them that the true legacy lies in love and character, they might dismiss it as idealistic or impractical. Instead, let them pursue their own definitions of legacy. Let them build their lives on the foundations of success. But over time, help them see that the most meaningful legacy comes from who they are, not just what they've achieved. When they realize that a legacy is not about possessions or accolades, but about the relationships they cultivate and the difference they make in the world, they will begin to approach life with a deeper sense of purpose. They will strive to leave a mark on the world, not through the accumulation of wealth or status, but through kindness, wisdom, and the values they impart to future generations. Final thought: embracing the fullness of life and its lessons. As you reach your 50s, life becomes less about seeking external validation and more about embracing the fullness of your own existence. You've learned the hard way that happiness, perfection, control, and success are all fleeting and imperfect goals. But in understanding these truths, you've also learned the most important lessons of all: to live authentically, to embrace imperfection, to surrender to the flow of life, and to find joy in the present moment. In the end, the lessons you've learned are not about what you have or what you achieve. They are about who you become and how you live. And these are the lessons you will pass on to your children, not through direct advice, but through the example you set and the love you give. The wisdom that comes with age is not something you can give in a single conversation. It's something that your children must discover for themselves through their own experiences, struggles, and triumphs. But if you live your life authentically, with kindness, humility, and a deep understanding of what truly matters, your children will see that example. And in seeing that, they will learn that the most valuable lessons are often the hardest to understand, the ones that come only with time and experience. So as you move forward into your 50s and beyond, remember that the true treasures of life are not the things you accumulate, but the wisdom you gain, the relationships you nurture, and the love you give. And in doing so, you'll leave behind a legacy far more powerful and enduring than anything you could have planned. It's often said that life is a journey, not a destination. As you turn 50, you realize that the journey isn't just about reaching milestones. It's about learning to embrace the process, to accept the inevitable changes, and to find peace with who you are, where you are, and what you've become. So, as you move forward, cherish the lessons you've learned, share them when the time is right, and allow your children the space to learn their own truths. After all, they're on their own unique journey, one that will eventually lead them to the same realization, that life, in all its imperfection, is a gift to be treasured.